You are taught that the stars are fixed, that they sit in their constellations, eternal and patient, like lanterns hung on a black wall. This is an illusion born of our short lifespans. The universe is not a gallery, it is a chaotic, high-speed firing range. And some of the bullets are entire suns. We call them hypervelocity stars. Imagine a star, perhaps twice the size of our own sun, moving so fast that the gravitational grip of the entire Milky Way cannot hold it back. It is traveling at millions of miles per hour, tearing through the interstellar medium like a cannonball through silk. Honestly, nobody really knows what it feels like to stand on a planet orbiting one of these runaways. If you were there, your night sky would be terrifying. You would see the familiar shapes of the galaxy warping and stretching as your entire solar system is physically ejected from the cosmic neighborhood. You are not just moving, you are being exiled. These stars are usually born from violence. A binary star system wanders too close to the supermassive black hole at the center of the galaxy. One star is swallowed. The other is violently whipped outward, stealing the orbital energy of its doomed twin. It is a slingshot maneuver executed on a scale that shatters the mind. We track these runaways because they are anomalies. They break the rules of galactic traffic. But think about the sheer mass involved. A runaway sun carries its planets, its asteroids, its comets, dragging them all into the deep, lightless void between galaxies. If our sun were kicked out of the Milky Way, we wouldn't die immediately. The sun would still burn. We would still have daylight. But the night sky would slowly, agonizingly empty out. Over millions of years, the stars would fade into a single, distant smudge of light, until nothing remained but an absolute, suffocating blackness in every direction. We assume we belong in this galaxy. But gravity is a fickle anchor. And if an entire sun can be thrown away into the dark, what makes us think we are safe from the eviction? Eviction is terrifying, but infection is worse. We trust the atoms in our bodies. We believe that carbon will stay carbon, that oxygen will stay oxygen, that the fundamental building blocks of reality are stable. But deep in the cores of dead stars, that stability is crushed into something diseased. When a massive star collapses, it can form a neutron star. The pressure inside is so intense that protons and electrons melt together. But in the very center, the pressure might push even further. It forces the fundamental particles, quarks, to change flavor. They become strange quarks. This creates a substance we call strange matter. And it is the most dangerous substance in the universe. Honestly, physics struggles to even describe this material. It is perfectly dense, perfectly stable, and perfectly indestructible. It is the ultimate state of matter. And because it is so perfect, it wants everything else to be perfect too. If a single droplet of strange matter called a strangelet were to drift through space and strike the Earth, it wouldn't explode. It would infect us. The moment it touched standard matter, it would reconfigure it. Iron, rock, water, flesh. All of it would be instantly converted into more strange matter. It is a subatomic contagion. A plague that doesn't target biology, but physics itself. The conversion would spread outward at near the speed of light. You wouldn't have time to scream. You wouldn't even have time to see it coming. In a fraction of a second, the entire planet, every ocean, every mountain, every human being would shrink into a sphere of strange matter the size of a football stadium. We look for asteroids. We track comets. We watch for the massive, fiery rocks that might end our civilization. But a strangelet could be smaller than a grain of sand. It could be drifting through the solar system right now, a silent, invisible bullet with the power to erase the Earth's identity from the cosmos. We assume that destruction has to be loud. We assume it requires heat and fire and fury. But the most efficient killer in the void doesn't burn you. It simply touches you and forces you to become something else. And once you are changed, there is no going back. The dark is not empty. It is a waiting room. And the seats are filled with the corpses of giants. We stare at the sky and call them stars. We treat them like beacons, like lanterns hung in the yard to guide us home. But a star is not a lantern. It is a slow, agonizing furnace fighting a war against its own mass. Gravity wants to crush it. Fusion wants to push back. It is a stalemate that lasts for billions of years, a fragile peace built on the constant annihilation of matter. But the fuel always runs out. Honestly, nobody really knows exactly what the star feels in that final heartbeat. When the iron core grows too heavy to hold up the sky, the pressure wins. The star snaps. It is a collapse of such scale that physics begins to stutter. In a fraction of a second, the entire structure of the star falls inward, hitting the core with the force of 1 trillion suns, only to bounce off in a shockwave that outshines a galaxy. This is the supernova. It is not a death. It is an erasure of identity. Think about what happens to the heavy elements forged in that furnace. The gold in your ring, the calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood. All of it is debris from a catastrophe. You are built from the ash of a violent, chaotic suicide. We are walking ghosts, made of things that had to die so that we could exist for a momentary, flickering breath. It feels personal. It feels like an injustice. But the universe is not cruel. It is just efficient. It recycles. It rips apart the massive to feed the small. Consider the star, Eta Carinae. It is a monster. A binary system, two beasts searching each other in a death spiral. It is shedding mass, blowing off gas and dust like a wounded animal, leaving a trail of blood across the light years. We have watched it erupt before. We have seen it swell and bleed, dimming the light of its own brilliance. We are waiting for it to go fully dark, or to vanish in a flash that will wash the night sky in high-energy radiation. We are spectators at an execution that has been ongoing for centuries. There is something deeply unsettling about watching a sun die. It strips away the comfort of permanence. If a star, a titan that held billions of lives in its gravity, can be snuffed out like a candle in a draught, what happens to us? We build our lives on the assumption of tomorrow. We plan, we save, we dream. But we live in a necropolis. The sky is a graveyard where the tombstones are still glowing with the heat of their own burial. Does a star mourn its own light? Does it feel the gravity pulling its guts into a point of no return? When the core collapses, space-time itself is warped. It is not just matter being destroyed, it is a fundamental reconfiguration of reality. The star stops being a star and becomes something else. A neutron star, a pulsar, or perhaps something even more wretched. A ghost. Look at the Crab Nebula. It is the shredded remains of a supernova witnessed by humans in the year 1054. Today, at its heart, sits a pulsar. It spins 30 times every second. It is a lighthouse of madness, firing beams of radiation across the void with such precision that it mocks the very concept of silence. It is a rhythmic ticking clock. A heart that refuses to stop beating even though the body has been blown to smithereens. Why does it spin? Why does it hum with that specific frequency? We map the pulses. We count the beats. But we are just counting the tremors of a corpse that doesn't know it's dead. We think we are the observers. We think we are separate from this wreckage. But we are not. We are the radiation leaking out from the blast. We are the dust settling on the ruins, and if the star that birthed your atoms is still waiting to explode, if the cycle is not yet finished for you, what happens when the shock wave finally reaches your front door? Is the destruction of the star the end of the story? Or is it merely the moment the universe decides you have existed for long enough? It is the moment the universe decides you are no longer needed. But not every entity dies with a blast of fire. Some simply lose their tether. They are the orphans of the dark. Thousands, perhaps billions of worlds slipping through the cracks of the light. They have no sun. They have no warmth. They are rogue planets, ghosts of the void that have been kicked out of their cradle and cast into the permanent night. Think about the sheer, crushing weight of that isolation. We define our lives by our anchor, the sun that rises, the heat that sustains, the cycle of day and night that keeps our minds anchored to a sane reality. But a rogue world has none of this. It drifts through the cold at thousands of miles an hour, a lonely marble in an infinite basement. No sunrise will ever touch its crust. No twilight will ever grace its horizon. It is a world that has been forgotten. And in that cold, there is no one left to remind it that it exists. Honestly, nobody really knows how many of these things are out there. We find them by accident. A tiny dip in the light of a distant star as a rogue world passes in front of it. A split-second flicker in the dark. That is the only hint we ever get. A gravitational fingerprint, gone as quickly as it appeared. It's haunting, really. We look for life, we look for warmth, we look for patterns in the noise. But the universe is mostly made of this. The cold, black, aimless drift. What happens to a mind that exists in that space? Forget the biology for a second. If you were standing on the surface of a rogue planet, the stars would be your only company. But they are distant. They are silent. They offer no heat. You would be staring into the same fixed, uncaring points of light for millions of years. Would you eventually stop being human? Does the lack of a cycle, the absence of the rising sun, eventually strip away the parts of the brain that need to track time? We fear the dark because it is the state of the universe when it is left to its own devices. Light is the exception. Gravity is a cage. When a planet is ejected from its system, it is an act of cosmic violence. A gas giant swings too close. A stellar encounter shifts the balance. And the world is flung out like a stone from a sling. It is forced into a state of total, unadulterated independence. But it is a hollow freedom. It is a death sentence served over an eternity. There is a terrifying stillness in these places. On Earth, the wind blows, the tectonic plates groan, the oceans churn. On a rogue planet, the atmosphere itself may have frozen solid, falling as snow that never melts. Imagine a world where the air you breathe is a layer of ice miles thick upon the ground. Everything that could move has ceased. Every liquid has turned to stone. The world is a tomb that never stops moving. If you value the signal you receive from this channel, consider that the algorithm is built to favor noise. It wants you to stay in the light, to scroll, to keep the illusion of connection alive. But here, we turn to the quiet. We anchor the frequency to the void. If you want to keep watching as we navigate the dark, hit subscribe. Let's make sure we don't lose the signal before we find out what's waiting at the end. We assume the universe has a place for us. We assume that because we are here, we belong. But a rogue planet proves that existence is not the same as belonging. You can exist perfectly well in the middle of nowhere, with no light to guide you and no gravity to pull you home. You are just a weight moving through a vacuum. And the scariest part, the universe doesn't even notice the path you're carving. You hit nothing. You warm nothing. You mean nothing to the trajectory of the galaxies around you. The drift continues. And for the planet, the silence is not a tragedy. It is simply the only truth it has left. What happens when there's no one to witness the drift? Does the world still exist? Or is it just another piece of junk waiting for the inevitable? Waiting for the inevitable until it wanders too close to a beast that cannot be seen. You think space is empty. You think the dark between the stars is a void. That is your first mistake. It is not empty. It is a high-speed, high-energy firing range where the bullets are smaller than light and twice as sharp. Deep in the graveyard of stars, there are things called magnetars. Imagine a sun crushed into a sphere the size of a city. It spins. It screams. Its magnetic field is 1 billion times stronger than anything we can make on Earth. If you stood near one, the atoms in your body would be ripped into thin, jagged needles. The iron in your blood would be pulled toward the core. You wouldn't die from a blast. You would simply be undone, stretched into a wire of human remains. But that's just the proximity. The real terror is the storm. Honestly, we have no idea how far these beams reach. They fire bursts of gamma rays, waves of pure, unadulterated violence across the dark. They are silent. They are invisible. They travel for thousands of years, carving a path through the dust, looking for nothing. If a pulse hit us, we wouldn't see it. We wouldn't feel it. 1 second you are reading these words, the next your atmosphere is ionized. Your nerves are cooked in your skull. It is the slow erosion that keeps me up at night. We sent probes into the Reach, past the shield of our own sun. Out there, the radiation isn't just a wave, it is a rain. A constant, heavy downpour of charged particles that gnaw at circuitry and tissue alike. It does not hit you once and finish the job. It hacks at your foundations, 1 electron at a time. It shatters the DNA inside your cells. Your body tries to fix the damage, but the storm is faster than the repair. Think of a monument left in the rain for 1 million years. The face is gone. The name is gone. The stone itself has turned to silt. That is what radiation does to the structure of matter. It strips the identity from the object until nothing remains but the shape of a memory. We are fragile bags of water, built on fragile chains of carbon. We rely on the quiet of our planet to keep our atoms in line. But out there, the quiet is a lie. The magnetar is the ultimate sculptor, taking our rigid, complex selves and melting us down into raw, mindless energy. Does this mean the universe hates us? No. That would imply the universe knows we are here. It is worse than hate. It is total, absolute indifference. We are like ants walking across a high-voltage wire. The current doesn't care about the ants. It doesn't aim for the ants. It just follows the law of its own nature. We have seen these storms hit nebulae, lighting them up like gas lamps in a tomb. We watch them from a safe distance, convinced that the miles of vacuum protect us. But every time a star dies or a magnetar shifts its skin, a new pulse is sent into the deep. A pulse that will eventually cross the path of something, somewhere. Is it possible that we are already in the crosshairs? Not of a bomb, not of an enemy, but of a beam of energy, traveling at the speed of light. Launched before our species even knew how to look up at the dark, we have detected flares from across the galaxy. We have measured the light that hits us. But we have no way of knowing if there is another pulse currently in flight. Something aimed directly at our sun. Moving across the silence, arriving at our doorstep tonight. If the sky suddenly turned to fire, would we even have the time to realize that the graveyard had finally come to collect its debt? But the debt is not just collected by fire. Sometimes the universe does not destroy you with a flash. Instead, it invites you to fall. We are drifting. Not just in our daily lives, but through the dark. Our entire galaxy, the Milky Way, is currently hurtling towards something we cannot see. We are being dragged at millions of miles per hour through the abyss. It is a massive, invisible hand, pulling us toward a point in space that refuses to show its face. We call it the Great Attractor. Honestly, nobody really knows why it exists. We try to look. We point our most powerful eyes at the heart of the anomaly. But there is a blind spot, a zone of avoidance. The dust and gas of our own galaxy hang in the way like a thick, black curtain, hiding whatever monster sits at the center of this pool. It feels like a trap. Think of it, we are a boat caught in an impossible current. We cannot turn the rudder. We cannot slow down. We are simply being drawn into a region of space so dense with hidden mass that it warps the path of every galaxy within hundreds of millions of light years. It is a gravitational drain, a cosmic sinkhole, and we are caught in the swirl. Why do we look for it? Why are we so desperate to know what is pulling us toward our end? There is a dark comfort in knowing your killer. We study the Great Attractor because we crave a destination, even if that destination is our own undoing. We hate the idea of being adrift. We fear the open sea. But this is worse. This is worse. This is a purposeful drift. If you could stand outside the reach of the Great Attractor and look at our corner of the sky, you would see a stream of galaxies, thousands of them all moving in a long, silent line. It looks like a pilgrimage. A long, sad march of burning stars heading toward a dark altar. Scientists argue about what is hidden there. Maybe it is a cluster of galaxies so heavy it dwarfs anything we have ever measured. Maybe it is a rupture in the fabric of space itself, a deep well that never ends. Some say it is not a thing at all, but a ghost of the early universe. A ripple left behind by the first few seconds of time, but it does not matter what we call it. The math is simple, and the math is cruel. We are moving toward it, and we are not stopping. Consider the scale. This isn't a pull like a star tugging a planet. This is the entire galactic neighborhood, a sprawling cosmic landscape, all bowing to a master we cannot define. It is the ultimate loss of agency. We think we are in control of our path through the dark, but we are just along for the ride. The universe is telling us that our entire history, our future, and the light of 100 billion stars are just items on a conveyor belt. We are moving toward a center, but it is not a center that offers warmth. It is a center that consumes. What if we reach it? What if we pass the curtain of dust and find that the attractor isn't a thing, but a threshold? We have this human sickness. We think if we can just name a thing, if we can just map it, we take away its power to hurt us. We name the attractor. We build models of its density. We calculate our arrival time. We talk about it like it is a point of interest on a map, not a grave. But the further we drift, the more the light begins to bend. The stars ahead of us are already shifting, losing their places in the constellations we have known for all of time. The sky is changing. We are being reshaped by the gravity of an unknown god. Perhaps the most unsettling part is the silence. There is no warning. There is no sound of the engine straining as we get closer to the edge. There is only the steady, relentless increase in speed. We are falling, and we are not alone. Millions of galaxies are falling with us. We are all bound together in this silent, accelerating drop. And for all our looking, for all our math, for all our terror, we still have no idea what waits at the bottom. We are just waiting for the curtain to pull back. We are waiting to see what is hungry enough to hold all of us in its grip. The pull is getting stronger. And we are already too deep to turn back. The hunger isn't personal. It doesn't hate us. It doesn't even know we are here. It is just gravity, acting out its primal script on a stage of trillions of stars. We watch the skies and we see shapes, spiral arms, elegant dances, balanced light. But the math tells a sharper story. These are not dances. They are wrestling matches. And they always end in a slow, suffocating erasure. Look at these two clouds of light. They look like wings. Beautiful, ethereal, fragile. But focus on the center. The gas is being stripped away. The stars are being thrown like grit from a spinning wheel. They aren't moving because they want to. They are being wrenched from their homes by a force they cannot fight. One galaxy is sliding into the gut of another. It isn't a collision. It is a slow, methodical integration. You can't tell where one ends and the other begins anymore. The individuality of the smaller system is being digested, converted into raw fuel for a new, bloated monster. Honestly, nobody really knows why we find this so chilling. Maybe it's the fear of being swallowed whole. Maybe it's the horror of realizing your home, your entire history, your stars, your planets. Your sunlight is nothing more than a morsel waiting to be pulled into a larger, indifferent maw. We are hardwired to protect our space. We feel a visceral, primal panic when our boundaries are breached. Yet, in the deep dark, boundaries don't exist. There is only mass, and the hunger of mass for more mass. Consider the Magellanic Clouds. They are our neighbors. They are locked in our own gravity's teeth. We are pulling them apart. Right now, as you sit here, our own galaxy is tearing streams of gas and stars away from these smaller wanderers. We are the predator. We are the monster in the dark. We are feeding. And one day, we will be fed upon in turn. The Andromeda Galaxy is falling toward us. It is coming at hundreds of kilometers every single second. It is inevitable. It is a slow-motion wreck that will turn the night sky into a chaotic, star-strewn graveyard. When we collide, the odds of two actual stars hitting each other are nearly zero. That makes it worse. It means the light will stay on while the structures are shredded. We will watch our neighbors burn, and they will watch us shatter. And we will both be too far apart to even scream. It's the ultimate loss of identity. Everything that defines a galaxy, the spin, the shape, the specific rhythm of its pulse, is leveled. It is flattened into a giant, featureless, elliptical blob. It is the cosmic equivalent of a lobotomy. A vast, thriving complexity of billions of lives, reduced to a graveyard of aging, red stars drifting in a stagnant, silent orbit. Does it hurt? No. Physics doesn't do pain. It only does trade-offs. Kinetic energy for heat. Order for disorder. Identity for mass. We look for life in the stars. But we rarely talk about what happens when the very ground life needs to survive is eaten. We treat the galaxy as a cradle, but it's actually a waiting room for the meat grinder. We don't even have a word for the grief of a planet that wakes up one morning to find its host galaxy has been folded into a stranger's shadow. See how they hover. They are so close, they are almost touching. That thin, wispy haze between them. That's the debris of 1,000 suns being torn off and cast into the void. It's like watching someone peel the skin off a fruit. And we are just watching. We are small. We are temporary. And we are living inside a predator. But here is the thing that keeps me awake. We aren't just observing these collisions. We are mapping the ones to come. We know the destination. We know the devourer. And we know that there is a limit to how much this hunger can grow. There is a point where the growth stops and something far more terrifying begins. What happens when the last scrap of food is gone? What happens when the cannibal has nothing left to eat but the cold, dark silence of its own bones? The cannibal stops eating because the heat is gone. The motion ends. Everything that once pulsed with the fierce, frantic hunger of stars sinks into a state of absolute, unyielding stillness. We think of cold as a thing that happens to our skin, a sharp bite of winter air. That is not cold. That is merely a mild dip in the scale of warmth. The true frozen frontier is a state of total molecular arrest. Consider the Boomerang Nebula. It is the coldest place we have ever found in the natural universe. It sits at about 1 degree above absolute zero. In this place, atoms do not dance. They do not vibrate. They do not interact. They are locked in a state of static, permanent suspension. If you were to touch the gas here, it would not freeze you, it would shatter your atoms into jagged, unmoving shards. It is a place where time, for all practical purposes, has stopped trying to move forward. It is a terrifying mirror to the human mind. Think of the last time you felt true, deep depression. Not sadness, not grief, but that thick, heavy velvet numbness where even the thought of moving your hand across a bedsheet feels like a physical impossibility. That is the psychological signature of the frozen frontier. It is the cessation of the self. It is the moment when the biological drive to persist simply clicks off, leaving a shell that is no longer living, but not quite dead. It is simply and dreadfully stuck. Honestly, nobody really knows why some pockets of the deep void stay this cold while others flare with the rage of 1,000 suns. We talk about the laws of thermodynamics as if they are iron bars. Yet we stare at the void and find gaps in the logic. We see patterns of cooling that defy our grasp of heat transfer. It is as if the universe is slowly learning how to forget how to be active. You might wonder if this cold is just a regional quirk, a freak occurrence in the far corners of space. It is not. It is the final boss of our reality. Everything in this universe is losing its heat. Every star you see, every spark of light, is a slow, dying breath. We are surrounded by a leaking light, a fire that is eventually going to gutter out. Think about the sheer scale of the waste. Trillions of years from now, when the last stars have burned their fuel and the black holes have evaporated into a faint, wispy hiss of Hawking radiation, the universe will be nothing but this, a vast, featureless, shivering ocean of nothing. No thought, no motion, no change, no change. Just the eternal, frozen stillness of a corpse that has finally stopped decaying. It is the ultimate end of all ambition. We run We build, we hope, we fear. We write books. We start wars. We look at the sky and beg for an answer. But the sky is moving toward this quiet, paralyzed stillness. Why do we bother? Why do we struggle to keep our internal heat high? Knowing that the outside is pulling it away from us, drop by drop. Perhaps we are the only things in this graveyard that have the gall to stay warm. We are a fever in the middle of a deep, endless sleep. We are a brief, burning mistake that the void will eventually correct. And the most unsettling part, we can feel it happening. We can feel the cold creeping into our own habits, our own cultures, our own slow decline into a world where nobody cares enough to look up anymore. We are not just looking at the frozen frontier. We are drifting toward it. The warmth is leaving us. And it is not coming back. The warmth is not coming back because the space we inhabit is laced with invisible traps. When we think of black holes, we imagine massive, gaping maws. Monsters born from the death of titans, sitting at the centers of galaxies, swallowing stars whole. But those are just the giants. The universe has a much smaller, far more insidious version of this horror. We call them primordial black holes. They were not born from dying stars. They were forged in the first fractions of a second after the Big Bang. When the universe was so dense that pockets of matter simply collapsed in on themselves. Honestly, nobody really knows how many of them survived. But the math suggests they are everywhere. Unlike the giants, these black holes can be incredibly small. Some might have the mass of a mountain, but be no larger than a single atom. They do not emit light. They do not have accretion disks. They are completely invisible, completely silent, and they are moving through the galaxy at thousands of miles per second. If one of these atomic-sized black holes hit the Earth, it wouldn't swallow the planet. It is too small, moving too fast. It would punch straight through the crust, core, and out the other side in a matter of minutes. It would be a microscopic bullet hole, straight through the heart of the world. You might think an atom-sized hole wouldn't do much damage. But the gravity packed into that atom is still the weight of a mountain. As it tears through the Earth, it would warp the rock around it, triggering massive seismic shockwaves. It would leave a trail of superheated plasma and localized destruction, a line of fire drawn straight through the mantle. How does that feel? To know that at any moment, the ground beneath your feet could be violently punctured by a remnant of the Big Bang. We build our bunkers. We design our shelters to protect against the threats we can see. We look up at the sky and scan for asteroids. We prepare for the fire from above, but a primordial black hole doesn't need to be seen. It doesn't give a warning. It is a piece of the universe's violent birth, still echoing through the dark, waiting to cross our path. We are floating in a cosmic shooting gallery, surrounded by shrapnel from the beginning of time. We haven't been hit yet, or at least we haven't noticed. But in a graveyard this old and this crowded, it It is only a matter of time before a bullet finally finds its mark. Discarded. That is the final fate of every atom you have ever touched. We cling to the idea that time moves forward, that progress is a law of nature. We build monuments. We write names in stone. We broadcast our existence into the dark, hoping something, anything, will listen. But the math does not care about your legacy. The universe is not a garden that needs tending. It is a fire that is slowly running out of fuel. And once the wood is burned, there is no warmth left to steal. Think of the universe as a giant, perfect room. At the start, it was packed tight with heat, light, and potential. Every star, every planet, every thought you have ever had is just a ripple in that initial burst of heat. But heat likes to move. It likes to spread out until it is thin, even, and dead. This is entropy, the ultimate thief. Honestly, nobody really knows why the universe chose to start in such a highly organized state. It seems like a fluke, a cosmic accident. And now, the universe is paying the debt for that first violent spark. As the eons grind on, the stars will blink out one by one. Imagine the sky losing its color. First, the blue giants die fast, bright and loud. Then the yellow dwarfs, like our own sun, swell up and shrink into cold white husks. Finally, the red dwarfs will fade. Trillions of years from now, the lights will simply stop. No more fusion. No more fusion means no more light. No more light means no more life. The universe enters the era of degeneracy. It sounds like a tragedy, but it is just a mechanical failure. The atoms themselves will begin to fail. Protons, the very things that give you shape and weight, may spontaneously fall apart. Everything solid, every mountain, every silicon chip, every human bone will drift away into a soup of light and shadow, spread so thin across the void that no two particles will ever touch again. We struggle to wrap our brains around this. We think in terms of minutes, years, or perhaps a human life. But this is a process that operates on timescales so vast they render the concept of history meaningless. If the entire story of humanity were a single grain of sand, the time it takes for entropy to finish its work would be a beach larger than any galaxy we can map. You might ask, what remains? If the stars are dead and the protons are gone, what is left of the ambition, the love, the war, the grief? The answer is nothing. The heat death of the universe is not an explosion. It is not a battle. It is an act of forgetting. It is the total erasure of information. Every mistake you have made, every triumph you have claimed, every secret you have hidden, it is all encoded in the structure of the universe. When that structure dissolves, the information is wiped. There is a cold comfort in this. If the universe is destined to forget everything, then perhaps the pressure we feel to be significance is just a biological glitch. We are terrified of being erased, so we invent ways to last longer. We want to be remembered. But the void does not remember. It just waits. Try to picture it. Not a black hole, not a supernova. Just a stillness so absolute that the idea of a place or a time no longer holds meaning. You are a collection of energy that has been borrowed for a heartbeat. Soon you will be returned to the void, and the void will be exactly as it was before you existed. The lights are not just dimming, they are disappearing. And there is no one coming to turn them back on. But what if the void is only empty? Because we are the ones looking for substance. We stare into the dark, teeth chattering, heart beating against ribs like a trapped bird. We call it hostile. We call it a graveyard. We see a magnetar and label it a butcher. We see a black hole and label it a grave. But the universe doesn't have a name for these things. It doesn't have a morality. Honestly, nobody really knows why we insist on carving our own trauma into the stars. Look at that image. Samandari. A ring of light, a hole of shadow. It is a machine of pure physics, grinding matter into nothingness. We look at it and feel dread. We feel the tug of the abyss. We project our terror of death onto a sphere of warped light, but the light doesn't care. It is just light. It is just gravity. The hostility isn't out there. It is a flicker behind your eyes. This is the observer effect. The act of measuring shifts the state of the thing being measured. When you shine a light on a particle to see where it is, you knock it off its path. You change its speed. You alter its reality just by wanting to know the truth. We are doing the same thing to the cosmos. We are measuring the stars with our fear, and in doing so, we change the shape of the universe. If we weren't here, would these places be hostile? A star explodes. It flings heavy metals across the deep. It creates the very stuff of your blood. Is that violence? Or is that just the way things are? We define hostile as anything that hurts the human form. If the universe could feel, maybe it would look at us and see a strange, brittle plague, a species that needs air, heat, and safety. Fragile things that shatter at the slightest bump in the dark. Think about the sheer arrogance of our gaze. We stand on a rock, spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, and we judge the dead. We judge the cold. We judge the entropy that will eventually turn every galaxy to ash. We want the universe to be a stage for our drama. We want the stars to be grand, meaningful symbols. But they are just atoms behaving as they must. There is no script. There is no intent. There is a cold truth hiding in the math. The math doesn't describe beauty. It doesn't describe horror. It describes limits. The limit of gravity. The limit of light. The limit of how long an atom can hold together before the heat dies out. We feel this as existential pain because we are biological machines built to avoid death. We see a supernova and see a catastrophe because if we were standing there, we would cease to be. But the star? It is just reaching a state of lower energy. It is finding peace. Is the void truly a graveyard? Or is it the only place in existence that is honest? We carry our internal chaos with us. We map our jagged emotions onto the vastness, trying to make the infinite fit inside a skull that evolved to worry about predators in the grass. We are looking for a pattern, a signal, a sign of intent. We are desperate for the universe to be angry at us, because if it's angry, at least it sees us. At least we matter. But what if the terror isn't that the universe is out to get us? What if the real terror is that it simply isn't looking at us at all? That we are a brief, noisy error in the machinery of a quiet expanse. We watch and we tremble. We search for meaning in the crushing weight of a black hole, hoping to find a message. But the message isn't there. There is only the math. And the math is telling us something so quiet, so final, that we refuse to hear it. It is whispering about a boundary we haven't crossed yet. A threshold where the observer and the observed finally stop pretending they are two different things. If the universe doesn't have an edge, and we don't have a center, then where exactly does the observer end and the graveyard begin? Are we really looking at the universe? Or are we staring into a mirror that's been waiting for us to blink? If the mirror is all we have, we are staring into a void that has been screaming back at us for billions of years. We spend our lives building towers of logic, stitching together constellations of meaning, hoping that if we name the stars, they will somehow know we exist. But naming things is a trap. It is a human reflex to cage the unknown behind a label. We call it a graveyard because we are terrified of the silence. We call it hostile because we cannot fathom a reality that does not care if we thrive or perish. Honestly, nobody really knows why we need to be heard. We are patterns of carbon forged in the belly of dying suns, drifting through a tomb that never asked for us to witness its decay. We demand a plot. We demand a hero's path. We want the universe to be a stage when the reality is far more gutting. We are the dust on the lens, and the lens is cracking. Think of the energy required to sustain a single human thought. You process data, you store trauma, you craft hope. Now compare that to the scale of the Great Attractor, where whole galaxies are pulled into an inescapable gravity well. There is no malice there. There is no intent. There is only the ruthless, elegant slide of matter toward its end. We feel small because we equate size with worth. We assume that because we feel, the universe must be capable of feeling us back. It is not. It is stone and ice and light that has been dead for eons before it hits our eyes. We are catching the funeral light of ghosts. There is a cold peace in this. If the universe is indifferent, then our misery is not a punishment. It is merely a byproduct of the physics that made us. We aren't being erased by a villain. We are just atoms moving toward a more stable state. The graveyard isn't waiting for us. We are already inside it. We were born into a tomb where the walls are made of light and the ceiling is a curtain of black. We struggle to find meaning because we confuse survival with purpose. A star doesn't aim to shine. It burns because the gravity is too much to bear. It is crushed by its own weight until it finally detonates, scattering its guts across the dark. Maybe we are the same. Maybe we are the same. We are under the crushing weight of awareness, trying to hold ourselves together long enough to leave a mark that the next wave of entropy will scrub clean. Is it noble to scream into a void that will never answer? Or is it the most absurd act of defiance we have? We reach out, we chart the storms, we count the dead stars, all while knowing that the very brain we use to ponder this will eventually go dark. And that information will be lost to the heat death of everything. The silence is not waiting to be broken. The silence is the baseline. We act as if our consciousness is a light held against the darkness, a brave torch in a haunted house. But what if the darkness isn't a lack of light? What if the darkness is the only thing that is actually real? Everything else, the suns, the planets, the brief, frantic pulse of human history, it's just a temporary flickering. A mistake in the geometry of the void. We are not the explorers of the graveyard. We are the ghosts, realizing that our hauntings have never once been witnessed. Look closely at the dark between the stars. It isn't empty. It is full of the things we refuse to see, waiting for us to stop looking. You are not watching the universe. The universe is finishing its slow, patient work of forgetting you.